It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Michael Hengartner, and I would like to take the next quarter of an hour to discuss with you how universities can become even better at serving society. I have been in charge for the last 5 years of the ETH domain. This is the university system that is run by the Swiss federal government in Switzerland. It consists of 2 technical universities, ETH in Zurich and EPFL in Lausanne, and 4 national laboratories, which do mission-oriented research, concrete research on environment, on energy, on materials. These 6 institutions are joined by a common mission, a common mandate from the government, from parliament, that says, be excellent in education, in research, and in knowledge and technology transfer. This is similar to what most universities are doing. Also, many of the universities in Chile have exactly this mandate. Now, how do we know that we do a good job? Most of us scientists assume that it's self-evident that universities are good things, that every city should be proud and happy and grateful if it has a university within us, because science is good. However, what we have seen is that more and more society sometimes questions this assumption. Even though we work as public universities for the public, we are funded by a public, in many countries we realize that increasing numbers of people, sometimes even majority of the population, critically questions the question, are universities really that useful to our society? Why is that? Sometimes it's because universities only teach to a small fraction of the population. Not everybody goes to universities. And the people who do not go there ask, why are only the others getting an education? Often these are the children of richer people, of a minority, of the elite. Second, universities are often more progressive than the populations within they are. This might help move society forward, but it also generates friction with the more conservative parts of society, sometimes also with conservative governments. A clear and dramatic example of that is in the United States, where for the last years there's been a strong opposition between President Trump and many of the universities within this country. Sometimes universities do research that people do not directly understand why that would be useful. I sometimes get accused of supporting useless research. Why am I paying my tax dollars for this thing that you cannot even explain to me why it's good? And finally, very practically, universities are big institutions. They teach to thousands of students. These students need to live, need to sleep, need to come to the university every day. This challenges the infrastructure, housing shortages, congested streets, and so forth. And so neighbors might ask, why does this thing need to be next to me? Could it not be somewhere else? What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit what we have done in the past years, trying to see how can we address these issues? How can we become better at teaching, at research, at knowledge transfer, to convince society that yes, universities are a good thing, and yes, cities should be grateful and should be glad to have universities among their perimeter. Let me start with education, because it's the most important function that any university has. One easy way to become more impactful, to do a better service, is by teaching more students. The more people we educate, the more society benefits, especially if we teach jobs that are important for society, doctors, engineers, and so forth. Now, we have been able, over the last 10 years, to increase dramatically the students that we teach. This, of course, is good. Switzerland needs engineers, it needs doctors. Now, just having more students would not necessarily be good if all you do is spend more money. We said we want to be better at teaching without needing more money. And you can see on the right that even with a constant budget, we've been able to increase by over a third the number of students we teach. The second challenge we had here is to make sure that the quality of education would not suffer. Teaching more but less good is not a good idea. How did we accomplish this? We took advantage of technology. We learned that there are tools, methods to teach that allow us to teach more students, but just as well. Some of this learning was not voluntary. For example, the COVID pandemic forced us to teach from home for 2 semesters. But some of this comes also from realizing that new technologies, new tools are extremely useful. Let's take artificial intelligence, for example. It's a fantastic new tool. It's here to stay. It's important that we teach our students how to use this both effectively, well, but also responsively. And this is something that we want them to learn as they go through our curricula. The second thing we realize is that students more and more use AI to learn. And that is good. However, we are absolutely convinced that AI agents need to be complementary to the offer we make by teaching either from the professor or from the peers, rather than supplementing, replacing these people. So what we want is to go from teacher and other students influencing learning to have AI complement the teacher or AI complement the other students. Why complement and not replace? That's simple. We have learned in the COVID pandemic that we can do a lot digitally, but it's not as good. After 1 semester, the students said, please let us come back on the campus. We need to see the professors. We need to see each other. And that makes sense because we are social creatures. I can tell you as a biologist, we work best when we're in a group. We learn best when we're a group. You can do a lot online. You can even fall in love online. But you know what? Once you fell in love online, usually you want to meet that person in person. The same happens in learning. Learning happens best when we interact with people. Let me move to research. How do we know that we do good research? Many politicians, many journalists go back to rankings and say, oh, well, the ranking tells us whether universities do good or not. We have the luck within the ETH domain that our 2 universities are very well ranked. But does that mean that they do a good job? Not necessarily. Ranking agencies will count what they can count, and then will, in an algorithm, make a ranking. Now, the problem with this, and this is not a new knowledge, this in fact is a quote from Albert Einstein, who was a student at ETH, by the way. He realized that not everything that counts can be counted. Much of the quality of education, for example, cannot be put into a number. And not everything that counts, that can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. These ranking agencies will take numbers that might not have a good relationship with the quality of an institution. So rather than simply relying on these numbers, we decided that in a discussion with society, with politicians, with industry, we need to identify what are the challenges that our society has, which are the questions that you need to get addressed. And so we developed a strategic framework where we said we're going to particularly invest our research energies into these 5 topics. Now, these are topics that are important for Switzerland. They're not only important for Switzerland. These topics are important for Chile: energy transition, climate change, environment protection, responsible digital transformation, quantum AI, human health in society that is evolving and urbanized, advanced materials and key technologies, cybersecurity, and so forth. So what we do now is that we invest much energy into this, in addition, of course, of continuing to fund curiosity-driven research, which is the basis of all education and of all novel developments that we can do for society. A lot of that research that is applied is very interesting, can be published in scientific papers, but much of it is not. These are important questions, but they're not very sexy. It's just, we need an answer. And so it's important among your professors to have people who don't necessarily want to publish in Nature, who say, I don't want a Nobel Prize, I want to help society. And so having the right mix of people in your institution is one of the answers to this challenge, how to be visible and get prizes, and at the same time, how to help the society where we're in. And this brings me to the last point, knowledge transfer. Many scientists believe that once they've published a paper, their job is done. They go on to the next question. This is wrong. Society, industry, politicians often have a hard time taking knowledge from a paper into application. We scientists need to help. And this is why we have invested much energy in the last years trying to encourage our scientists and our students to also take the next step and transfer the knowledge that they have from the paper into the application. Be it through cooperation with industry, we sign a new cooperation agreement every 12 hours, 2 per day, 800 per year. Be it by patenting our discoveries and then bringing it to industry. Every second day, we have a new patent based on discoveries made at ETH Zurich and EPFL. And then we take these patents and we develop them either with industry through licensing, or more and more, we have discovered that one of the very exciting ways of getting this knowledge into society is by encouraging the students to take the discovery and make a business out of it, start a new company. This works because young people are often more idealistic than older people, and they're also more risk-taking than older people. Older people will say, well, I'm not completely sure about this. Young people will say, yes, I want to change the world. I want to build my own business. I want to do this. Every week, we start a new company out of the ETH domain with a great idea that might change the world. Here are a few examples. They're all from the environment, from the climate change, energy, but we have, of course, have many companies also in other areas. Top left, Climeworks, a company that tries to directly take CO2 out of the air. Now, this is an expensive solution, but if you do it right where CO2 is produced, for example, at a cement factory, it might be a very good contribution. Then you can capture the CO2 as it is produced, and you can do something else with it. Enerdrape from EPFL. We have all these parking garages. Often they're underground. These walls at the underground parking garages directly touch the soil, directly touch the earth. We can take the energy in the soil to generate heat or remove heat. So using a heat exchange system, Enerdrape allows these parking garages to become batteries for heat that can cool or heat buildings around them. Symphony tries to optimize energy production in whole neighborhoods. Most of our neighborhoods already exist. We need to live with them. But usually they have been optimized just one building at a time. Symphony tries to connect these buildings in a neighborhood and optimizes energy usage, taking advantage of what's available within the neighborhood to reduce energy costs and save CO2 in the process. And many more examples. Deep Poly tries to recycle plastics. Synhelion tries to generate sustainable fuels for airplanes, and so forth, and so forth. Not every idea succeeds, of course. But if you don't try, you will not succeed. And I think this shows how universities can teach their students to take advantage of their new knowledge, to generate business opportunities that can at the same time help society develop. Not every idea can be directly implemented into an implementation, be it an application, be it a product. And often, knowledge actually needs to be also needs to be generated that can be used by policymakers, needs to be used by politicians. They don't need a product, they need to have options. They need to understand what solutions are available, what are the advantages and the disadvantages of each of these solutions. Scientists tend to be bad at this because the language of science and the language of politics are quite different. And so we created a school, we call it the School of Public Policy, where we try to teach scientists how to present scientific data in a way that politicians understand and can usefully use them to make evaluations. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? So that they can choose the best solution for the society for which they are active. And finally, we need to interact with the public themselves, with our neighbors. We do this through public lectures, be it for children, for retired people, be it by collaborating with musea, or, shown here, by having open door days. One weekend every 2 years, the ETH Zurich and the University of Zurich, right next door, open the door to the public. 25,000 people come over the weekend. We have stands where our researchers, our scientists, our PhD students explain what they're doing. Not easy. Again, often you need to somehow translate that into a language that people understand. But again, here another quote from Einstein: if you cannot explain what you do simply, perhaps you haven't understood it well enough yet yourself. And so my challenge to every PhD student is, if you cannot explain what you do to your grandmother, go back and work on it more. We need to be able to explain what we do if we want to make sure that people have an understanding for what we do. Now, if you feel that Científica sounds a little bit like Congreso Futuro, you're absolutely right. Except that Congreso Futuro is even better, I have learned. We do Científica every 2 years. Congreso Futuro is every year. We do Científica just in Zurich for the people who live in Zurich. Congreso Futuro is all over Chile. Congreso Futuro involves many of the young people. So it's interesting. I came here trying to tell you what I've learned. I go back having learned myself. I find Congreso Futuro extremely inspiring, and I have learned a lot. In this sense, I thank the organizers not only for having invited me, but also for having taught me something, and I thank you. Muchas gracias por su atención.